So for my research project, I had the Battle of Stalingrad, and this battle lasted from July 17th, 1942 until February 2nd of 1943. And this battle was one of the most successful for the Soviet defenses because they successfully defended the city of Stalingrad, which was essentially the heart of the fighting. The Russians considered this battle to be the greatest battle for them because it was a huge success in defending their country. The Germans thought that conquering Stalingrad would be the most essential part of their invasion of southern Russia. And if the Germans were to conquer Stalingrad, the Germans could use the Volga River to launch attacks on the Caucasus. And the Russians realized the importance of defending this city because it was an industrial center as well as a transportation center. So Hitler's plan was to take the oil fields, which fueled Russia's war machine, then to take Stalingrad, since it was a major rail junction and industrial center and was located on the river. So Hitler thought that by taking this city, he could use the railroads and use the river to transport other munitions and make his army more successful. So on September 3rd, 1942, the German army reached the outskirts of the city of Stalingrad. And then the Germans thought that they thought that this attack was going to be easy and that they were going to take the city, and they didn't really assume there would be that much resistance from the Russians. However, the Soviet army had new tactics that they put into place, and Hitler was extremely confident in his army, so he decided to launch the two-prong attack. One would be to go and exploit the oil resources, and the other would be to take the city of Stalingrad. And he thought that this was going to be an easy taking of the city because the Soviet army was exhausted from the prior fighting before the Battle of Stalingrad. So the battles that they fought before, the Soviet army was appearing to be weak. And this is what Hitler thought. However, the Russians actually had built up their defenses and brought in more reinforcements to prepare for this fighting. So this is a picture of Adolf Hitler, and he was the German leader during World War II, and the leader of the USSR was right here, who pictures Joseph Stalin. And so Hitler thought that this tactic that he was going to use, the two-pronged attack, was going to be successful. However, the Soviet generals implemented a new tactic on their side. They knew that the tactic of blitzkrieg had been successful for the Germans in the past, so they decided to change some of their tactics. So their tactics were to, instead of standing their grounds as prior tactics were, they decided to retreat when the battle wasn't looking good and their troops were losing a lot of troops. And this is one of the reasons why the war was almost prolonged. And this was the opposite of the German tactic because Hitler instructed all soldiers to stand their ground no matter what the costs were at all times. And the tactic allowed more Soviet soldiers to be saved, and it continued the fighting of the war rather than just losing all of your men when it's a clear loss. So this, like I said, went against the tactic that the Germans used of blitzkrieg, and it did not work on the Soviets in this battle, so it contributed to the length of the battle and the length of the war in general. And overall, the city of Stalingrad was bombed many times by the Germans, and if you look, this is what the city of Stalingrad currently is. Its name is now Volgrad, but it is in the southern part of Russia, and it said that there were more than 1,000 tons of bombs dropped on the city of Stalingrad in this fighting. So this, as you can see in this next picture, created a mess in the streets and in the city, and the bombing served as a good hiding place for the Russians as they awaited attack from German forces. So as the Germans were coming closer, they were able to hide in the debris in the remains of the buildings that had fallen. And the tactics that the Russians had were, like I said, that they wanted to, after they knew they were getting beat, they retreated. However, what they were looking to do was they were looking to make the Germans travel further and exhaust more of their resources and hopefully deplete their resources. And this can be seen because many tanks had to stop a lot of times through the journeys on the way to Stalingrad, and they ran out of fuel on the battlefield and they had to be refueled. And then also in mid-November was when the German army was really running short of both men and munitions. So Russia successfully made them deplete their resources, and then at this point they launched their attack. So, like I said, the Germans had their tactics where they were told to stand their ground no matter what. However, this wasn't successful because they were clearly outnumbered by the Russians, and the Russians attacked the Germans when their men and their munitions were short, and Hitler wouldn't let them escape. So they were surrounded by the Russian forces, and Hitler had arrangements, because he knew that they were short of men and munitions, to get them resupplied through the air. However, the air marshal in charge was not able to follow through with this demand, because many of the planes that were supposed to fly either did not fly because it was the bad weather of the cold winter in Russia, or because they were shot down by other Russian airplanes. And the winter, like I said, played a huge role because the planes weren't able to fly. And on February 2nd, 1943, was the official surrender of General Paulus of the German army, who surrendered to the Russian forces. And in like an overall perspective, there were 90,000 soldiers remaining in the German army, and they were clearly outnumbered by the Russian forces. And then 150,000 German soldiers had died in the fighting of this battle. And after the battle, the outcome of the battle was that Hitler became much more unconfident in his generals because they were not able to produce the results that he anticipated. And Hitler remained very confident in his generals, and it boosted his confidence and boosted the way he fought the rest of the war. And just an overall general look at this war, or at this battle of Stalingrad, you can see that the life expectancy was so short for these soldiers, and there was actually a statistic that said that the life expectancy was for a Soviet soldier was no more than 24 hours on the battlefield. So this, in general, just shows how the life expectancy was so short, and how so many people died, and how the battle was such a bloody and violent battle.